Hey there, friends. Welcome to the Having a Mom Moment podcast, where we dive deep into the world of motherhood and beyond. I'm your host, Shannon Warner, and I am excited to embark on this journey with all of you. Here's the deal. This podcast is your ultimate sanctuary, your sacred space to hit pause on the chaos of mom life and reconnect with the amazing woman behind the title of mom. Yep, it's all about those precious mom moments because, let's face it, we all need a little more time for ourselves. Am I right? So what can you expect from our time together? Well, picture this. We'll be soaking up wisdom from fellow moms, sharing their stories and triumphs and how they've tapped into alignment on their own motherhood journeys. It's like a mom-to-mom chat over coffee, with a sprinkle of inspiration and a dash of humor thrown in for good measure. We're here to light up your soul, to remind you of your incredible power, and to celebrate the unique spark that makes you, you. Because when we take care of ourselves, we become unstoppable forces for good in the lives of those we love. So join me as we laugh, learn, and rediscover the magic of this crazy ride called motherhood together. Get ready for your weekly dose of connection and encouragement, because around here, we don't just mom. We mom with purpose and power in alignment with our true selves. Stay tuned, my friends. The adventure starts now. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Shannon Warner, and I am so grateful you're here. I hope everything is going beautifully in your world, and if not, I'm sending you a big, big hug. There have been some things happening behind the scenes here that I'm not quite ready to share with you yet, but things are happening. It's been an interesting adventure over the last few weeks, but it's all good things. But if things are being shaken up in your world as well, I see you. So today's conversation is a topic that I love so much, and it is geared towards women considering a career shift, especially teachers, because I am a former classroom teacher. My guest today is a former classroom teacher. So while it speaks specifically to the experience of teachers who are looking to navigate out of the profession, there's still some really good stuff in here for anyone who may be considering a career change. So my guest today is Brittany Cates. She is a teacher turned UX designer. As an artist at heart, Brittany knew that teaching wasn't the right path for her early on in her career. This led her to explore more creative endeavors by attempting to leave the profession twice before finally identifying her dream career. Through career coaching and mindset work, Brittany was able to transform her beliefs in order to pursue a job transition that once seemed near impossible. Now, she is guiding women who are currently in a similar place that she once was by helping them reshape their limiting beliefs and sharing actionable steps to help them accomplish their goals through one-to-one coaching. In her spare time, Brittany enjoys a good Netflix binge, hanging out with friends and loved ones, and traveling. Let's get into it. On to the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Brittany. Thank you so much for being here.
Shannon, thanks for having me today. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you again.
Yes, you too. I was interviewed by Brittany for her podcast, which we will talk about a couple weeks ago now, but we run in a similar community. So I'm excited that we've had the chance to connect not once, but twice, and I'm excited to share her with all of you. So as someone who considers themselves very career-oriented, I absolutely love your mission. I love the premise of your podcast, and I think the work that you're doing is so important. So could you please introduce us to all the things, your background, and all the magic you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. So I used to be an elementary school teacher, and I taught for about 10 years off and on because the whole time I was trying to figure out what else I wanted to do with my life. And I made I tried a couple of times, right, to make a career change. And my most recent one, I'm very happy with, and things have worked out very well. And so I transitioned from being a teacher to being a UX designer. UX stands for user experience. And so it's kind of like a graphic designer, but for like the web. And I don't just make like a website or a software look pretty. I think through processes, and I look for patterns that are like common patterns that people are used to. And I interview and research like with users to make sure that what I'm creating actually serves their needs. And so it's kind of like this double-sided like design, but also problem solving like
Mm.
genre or niche. And so I was really excited to find it when I was kind of trying to figure out what my next career move was, because I felt like it married a lot of my strengths. And I've been doing this for a little over 3 years now. And in the process, like I've encountered some women that are like, I don't know how you did that. I could never change my career. Like, oh, you did that, but I could never, and
Mm.
there's
Mm-hmm.
like every time that conversation comes up, I get like so passionate, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, you can do that. Like,
Right.
and so anyway, I've been wanting to like give back and help other women who are in my predicament because my career like satisfaction was such a pain point for me for so long.
Yes.
Like I I knew pretty early on in my teaching career that this was not it for me. And yet I stuck around
Yeah.
and I did it for a really long time and I left and then I would come back and like and every time I would like be crying or like about what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? And so anyway, I'm just in a really good place now, and I want to help other people get there too, because I get it.
Oh, yeah. I think this is so important. As a former classroom teacher myself, I know that a lot of us felt quote unquote called to the field, like it was placed on us in this lifetime to be an educator. And for whatever reason, if you chose education is fine. It's very noble, but noble also doesn't pay the bills. So it's can be very thankless and very labor intensive, and it requires a lot of grit and a lot of boundaries. And I think that's why, for a lot of reasons, the people who go in it that have really good hearts really struggle. This is just my perception. It's because you want to do the right thing and you want to show up and you want to do what you're supposed to do and you are a good student and you're checking the boxes and da 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 da. Next thing you know, you've got this load that is unmanageable and these expectations that I don't know if someone else has placed on you or if you've placed them on yourself, but they're unreasonable, right? And you just can't sustain it for very long. So I think it's interesting that you also left and then you came back. And I made a point last year, although I had left the classroom at the end of 2014, I had maintained my license until this last year, like 1 year ago. And then finally I was like, what am I doing? Like, let that baby expire, right? Let it go.
Yes.
It's hard. It's hard to accept that it's not what you thought it was going to be or that it doesn't serve you. It's hard to determine what's next, where to go.
Mm.
And then some of us just need to forgive ourselves for it not being what we thought and allowing ourselves to move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you make so many great points that, as you say it, I'm like, oh, I remember feeling that. Oh, I remember thinking that, like,
Yeah.
and yeah, absolutely. And the forgiving yourself and allowing it to be what it is, not what you wanted it to be or what you thought it might be,
Yeah.
and letting go of the expectation, right? Like you're talking about who puts the pressure on you, right? Like,
Right.
and I think a lot of teachers are very like high achievers, very
Yep.
type A, very
Yeah.
perfectionist. Like I was a good student when I was in school and had a positive experience with education. And therefore I thought, oh, I would love to be a teacher, because I'm good at a lot of those things, and then
Yeah.
it just like piles on you. And because I'm like a good student and I want to do it right and I want to do all the things, like, yeah, I think a lot of the pressure is self-imposed and there has to be a point. I think every teacher gets to a point where they're like, okay, I got to take a step back. I got to start setting boundaries because I think about my first few years teaching and how I would bring work home and I would stay up late and I would lesson plan and it had to look a certain way. And then about 3 years in, I was like, I'm done with that. Like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
doing that anymore, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a roommate at the time who she just loved teaching. Like, she was so good at it. She loved it. Like, spending time outside of the classroom, like working on projects and lesson plans and grading and stuff. Like, she found so much joy from it. And I would be like, you do you, because I'm
Right?
not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that made me feel like I was a bad person. Like I wasn't
Mm.
a good teacher, that I didn't love my students or
Oh
like
my
I didn't love
gosh.
my job enough, you know?
Mm.
And yeah, so it's just interesting all the things that go along with the pressure
Yeah.
you put on yourself.
Right? I know. And being so responsible for when you are a teacher, you've got your little room full of students. If you're in like an elementary setting and they're with you all year and they feel like your little family and you feel indebted to them in a way, like I have to raise them to be, third graders at the end of the year and they have to meet these benchmarks and they have to pass their end of grade exams if you're in a state that has those god awful things. And, it is a lot of pressure, but this is not all teachers, but I would say most teachers who show up with any level of effort, they're already doing an amazing job, like
Yeah.
doing such a good job. And two, I love how you said like releasing the expectation of like what you thought it was going to be, because I had a very positive school experience. I loved my teachers. I felt very loved by my teachers. It was very, very good all around. But that was also the 90s when I was in elementary school. Like it's a different
Yeah.
world today, folks, and it's okay to accept that it's just not what you thought it was going to be, but give yourself the permission to exit the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, like, I know there's this idea of feeling like being a teacher is your identity. And I remember
Mm,
early on, because I was struggling so much with um, really believing that this was the career for me, like I remember early on, like crying to some friends of mine of like, but I'm not just a teacher, like,
oh my
and
gosh.
having that like identity like crisis and trying to like move away from making that like who I was. And I felt like society was kind of defining that for me too. It's like everywhere I went, it's like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a teacher. Oh my gosh, and like everyone can
Yes.
relate to being a teacher because they've had a teacher or they know somebody as a teacher, their mom's been a teacher forever. And I'm
Right.
always like, that's not all that I am,
Oh
you
my gosh.
know?
Such a good point.
And it
Yeah.
really, and so when I mean, I wasn't in the profession for nearly as long as some people,
Yeah.
right? And yet when I hear that that's a struggle for people, I'm like, because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's not all you are. That's a piece of you.
Right.
And I certainly hope and challenge people out there to like let that be like one piece of you and take time to explore other
Mm-hmm.
pieces of who you are because you're not just one thing,
Right.
you know?
Right. We're so multifaceted. And even if you're not in education, I think there are other people who can identify this. Like I'm a nurse or I do this or I do that or oh, I'm just this or what have you. It's so important. So one thing that I have heard from people when I was thinking about leaving or after I left was I don't know what else I would do.
Mm,
And
yeah.
I explored that for a long time and I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but landing that role was not as easy as I thought it would be. So my situation was I kind of fell into something else and it was operations and it was out of my wheelhouse, but I learned how adaptable and how resourceful I had learned to be as a teacher. And as long as you just like show up and do what you're asked to do with a half of the effort and energy you put into teaching, you're pretty much going to be successful, right? Like you're so much more qualified than you realize. So can you speak to that
Yeah.
a little bit? Teacher or otherwise, someone who's like, I just don't know what's next. And I don't have skills outside of this thing that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes back to this like we identify so closely with this is the thing that I do.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so the whole idea of transferable skills is like, okay, how can I look at maybe this skill of, um, we're talking a lot about teaching, but let's say nursing, where I am filling out charts all day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, in that context, you're filling out charts for this reason, right? Like whatever, I'm not a nurse, I don't know, whatever
Right.
reason it is, right? Okay, what have you learned? Like, what skill do you have from filling out those charts, or like lesson planning as a teacher? Like, what kind of skill is lesson planning? Well, it's thinking through processes, it's creating like a step-by-step plan, it's executing. I mean, like, not just creating the lesson, right? But actually following through with it. And also the flexibility you have to have in the middle of a lesson plan,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you and recognizing, like, oh, the kids aren't getting it. I can pivot this way. And so, like, in the moment, you're being resourceful, right? And like using your expertise and your skills to kind of like navigate the lesson. And I think I just like was like listing it off on my finger. Like that's at least 5 different skills that you're implementing in one setting. How can you convey that value just in a different way to whatever new career it is that you're pursuing? And that's part of what a resume is, right? Like showing the value and the skills that you bring. And so taking the teacher piece out of it, right? And being a little bit more objective about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is really important. And I think it's also this idea of like we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we actually
Right.
can do.
Right.
Um, and so taking time to like reflect on, even if it's just at the end of the day, right? Like, okay, what did I do today that I felt really proud of, and like
Yeah.
and recognizing that strength within you. um I think it really goes a long way with building your confidence, recognizing what your skills and strengths are, and then taking that information and deciding, okay, how can I use this in my career journey, as I'm pivoting. So
That's so good. Taking the time to reflect. Yeah. What did you enjoy too? So you can maximize those things. If there's pieces that you don't like if entering grades in the grade book is making you crazy, that's data entry. You don't want a data entry job, right? Like you
right.
can help kind of parse out the pieces that you do enjoy, the pieces that you don't enjoy.
Yes.
And there's so much, I mean, moving from one career into another, the number of different kind of tasks and responsibilities I had in one single day as a teacher, like it's more than I had to do in like a month sometimes in this other
Yes,
role, because it's a lot of the same
absolutely.
thing in and day out. And as an educator, or even if you're in a field like nursing, I know there's other examples, but that's what we keep coming back to. But it's like there's so many variables. It doesn't matter
Yes.
if you're doing the same kind of thing every day, like you're bringing in a people aspect that's going to change things up, and whether the moon is full and whether there's a weather delay and there's snow on the ground. It's just like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
the way you have to pivot. I just give yourself so much credit. You're so much more resourceful, whether you're a teacher, nurse, whatever. You're so much more
Yeah.
adaptable than you realize. And
Yeah.
give yourself the permission to be like, hey, this isn't it, and start making a plan. And I found too, I was so burned out. I was so burned out that the role that I took is what some people would just consider it a bridge role, like kind of a just something else. And that's what it
Yeah.
was for me. I was like, I just need to do something else to kind of
Yes.
recalibrate. And it felt so easy compared to what I was doing. And then after being there
Yes.
for a little bit, I was like, this is a good enough fit for now. And I stayed. And I stayed for longer than I should have, but I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't depleted. I wasn't burnt out. I didn't, and I hate to say this, but I know other people have felt similarly. I did not have suicidal thoughts, but I did have thoughts. I had a very long drive to work where I was like, if I just slid into the ditch and like broke an arm, I could have a day off maybe. Like that's not how we should be, right? That is
Right.
not how it should go.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like there's nothing wrong with the bridge role, with getting out so that you can, getting out and having something to maintain, your income and lifestyle to a certain degree, right? It might not be exact, but I always feel like, but you're a teacher, like
Yeah.
you'll be fine.
Right. Exactly. Not to minimize it, but no, seriously, you will.
Yeah. And because whatever, like you're saying, whatever job you do get outside of teaching, you're going to have so much more time to like figure it out, you know?
Mhm.
Whereas, I mean, I will say my last year of teaching was 2020,
Oof. Yeah.
like 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
the infamous year. And I volunteered to teach online that year
Mhm.
because it all started in March, right? And so that was like the end of a school year. And
Right.
then the new school year started up, and I volunteered to be the online teacher for my grade that year because I had already had a plan, right? Like I already
Mm.
knew I was
Yeah.
working towards something else, and I knew I needed extra time to focus on that.
Yeah.
And so by working from home, I knew I would have extra time. Whereas I knew if I'd gone back into the classroom, I would never, I would never have gotten as far as I
Yeah.
did because uh, I chose a different way to teach, but it's a similar idea of a bridge type
Yeah.
job, right?
Yeah, totally. Oh, that's
So
good. That's really good. Okay. So did how did you find the path that you're on now? Were you like, okay, I have these skills. What aligns with this? Or did you see somebody doing this job? Or how did you get there from being the I don't want to teach anymore, I'm burned out, I'm depleted, woman that you were?
yeah, so backing up a little bit, you talked earlier about how a lot of people feel called to teaching. I was not one of them to begin with.
Fair.
Um, my original major was graphic design in school.
Fascinating. Okay.
So I have an associate's degree in that. I started my bachelor's degree in that and then chickened out.
Oh my gosh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I took a few semesters and felt like, oh my gosh, look at all these amazing people around me. I am not good enough to do that. Like I am not
Mm.
creative enough. I'm not enough, And so in the midst of college, I was like, I have to change my major,
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh. That's a lot of
So
pressure.
so yeah, I chose teaching and here we are. But and so I already knew growing up, like I loved being artistic. I loved art classes. I loved graphic design for many reasons. And so my first career transition was to become an interior designer because I always knew I wanted to do something artistic and more creative. Um, and that kind of didn't go as planned. And so this time around, I was a little bit more hesitant, right? Because I felt like I tried already. I'd
Mm.
failed to leave teaching. But I was at a turning point anyway. I was like, I'm ready for more. I'm ready for the next thing. And is that in education or is it not, And so I explored some different options in education. And and there are moments that I like that come to my mind of when I was teaching, like how I noticed certain things about myself. Like I remember one day, like walking across the playground back to my classroom, and I was just thinking in my mind, this is so terrible, but I could do way better than this principal that I have right now.
Oh,
Like,
for real. Seriously.
and I was just like, I can't believe this is blah, blah, blah. Like I was just complaining myself and I was noticing like, okay, Brittany, if you think you could do better than this, then what is it about, your strengths
Yeah.
that makes you think that? And so I was already kind of starting to like recognize and observe things about myself, right? And then I was looking at other options like getting a master's degree or like specializing in something and nothing felt right. like I wasn't excited about any of it, you know?
Yeah.
I was just like,
Yeah.
ugh, like
Right. And if you
another, like,
feel that way before, it's not magically going to get better once you're in the role, right?
yeah, exactly. And so because we had to do this online teaching in the midst of COVID, I built a website for my students. And I like stayed up to like 2 in the morning, like creating this like cutesy like
Yeah.
website. And I was telling my girlfriend about it a few days later, and she had already left teaching, and she is a software engineer.
Wow.
And she said, you know, if you like this, I think you might be interested in UI design, which is user interface design. And I was like, oh, what's that? You know? So she gave me, she's like, this is what I know. She's like, I don't know the whole thing, but I think you might like it.
Yeah.
And so I started doing my research and I got really excited about it because I was like, oh my gosh, it's not just like building the website. It's like thinking through the processes, right? Like I explained
Mm-hmm.
earlier. And that's something that I noticed even when I was getting my interior design like certification. I loved thinking through like floor plans and like
Mm.
how it would flow and like how, where to put the furniture and stuff like that. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I think this is up my alley. Like it's marrying these two strengths that I've noticed in myself, right? The creative, designy, artistic piece and the patterns and problem solving piece. And so that's how I discovered it.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
and kind of how I started recognizing right within myself. So I
Mm-hmm.
think some key like lessons from that are a start making observations, write things, oh, what did I accomplish today? What are my strengths? What do I enjoy? And then the other is like having a support system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like having
Mm-hmm.
people surrounding you that are like, oh, hey, what about this? Or, oh, I noticed this about you. Like, I think you might like this.
Yeah.
And having that guidance, because a lot of times you're not going to like just know what opportunities are out there, right? Like I'd never heard of this before until
Right.
she mentioned it.
Right. Yes. I think it's important going back to the, taking notice. We go through our days very unconscious a lot of the time. We're just on autopilot. And it's
Mhm.
hard if you're not used to like tuning back in to go, wait a minute. You're just like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. Oh, I don't mind this glimmer right here. But I remember I had a moment I was sitting on the playground bench. We didn't have duty free lunch. We didn't have duty free recess. So I was sitting on the bench roasting in my ugly little flats that were the only thing comfortable enough to stand in all day. And I was like, what is my life? Like, I'm like having to yell at kids to not like climb up the slide. Like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? Like, I love them, but what is
Yeah.
happening? Yeah. And pausing when you have those moments and going, okay, like, and then maybe realizing too, like, oh, is my issue the fact that I don't have duty free lunch or duty free recess? Well, maybe if I went to another school, I could find that somewhere else. So if you're not ready to like bail out of your current profession, maybe
Yeah.
seeing if another environment is better suited. And then also about having your community, I think it's important too that you're talking about the things that you're doing, because she identified some things for you, but someone may know somebody, and that's what happened
Yeah.
for us. Was it was actually my husband's gym buddy knew the owner of this company, and he was like, "This guy over here is hiring. Do you want me to talk to him?"
Yeah.
And this guy, I will say, he did have a knack for identifying strengths in people that they often didn't see in themselves. And I do
Mm.
applaud his ability to do that. But yes, if you're talking to people, then these opportunities might show up, even if it's something that you're like, I don't know if that's a good fit for me. But again, it could even just be that little bridge job so that you can explore.
Yeah.
And it gives you another opportunity then to be like, okay, I do like this and I do not like this. And I would love more of this and less of this, please.
Yes, absolutely. And I think like it's really important to identify both, but veer on the side of, okay, what is it that I do want and
Yes.
what is out there that has those things? Because one excuse I hear a lot is like, well, the grass isn't always greener. It's
But it
like,
might be.
or well, a job's just a job. Like it's never going to be perfect,
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, yes and no. Like,
Yeah.
And so focusing on like, okay, these positives, these are the things that I am searching for. And yes, there's going to be challenges and negatives with any job that you take, but as long as they have these top 5 things, then I'm going to be okay. It's going to be way better,
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
and so yeah, just shifting that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Can I ask what kind of training, education, certification did you have to go through,
Yeah.
if any, to make this transition?
Yeah. So, I did all the research. I'm a researcher.
Yeah, same.
Um, and I looked into going back to school, but I have 3 degrees
Mm-hmm.
and my student debt had been paid off for a few years by that time. And I was just like, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like I can't do it again. And so after much like searching, I actually found an online program. And it was a coach who she taught women who it was actually moms returning to the workforce.
Mm.
That was her like focus, but she's like, anybody's welcome. And getting them into tech roles. And
Mm-hmm.
so she had a UX design program, and I took her free like master class, and
I love a free
learned.
master class. Yeah.
All right. And I said, so, and it was really affordable. Like her program was really affordable. And I said, so you're telling me I don't have to have a degree, like an official degree in this to make a change? And she's like, nope, come on.
Mm.
And I was
Wow.
like, okay, cool,
Yeah.
because I don't want another degree. And
Right.
like I already had a design background, and I also her big thing is like transferable skills, right? Like
Yeah.
you have 90% of everything you need already to change your career. She's like, it's
Mm.
this last 10% of the skill, to like create and go through the UX design process. Like, I could teach you that. Like, let's do a hands-on project, which is another thing that I really liked because I remember being in teaching and you go through all these theory classes, and it's not until you get into that classroom that you're like, whoa, you
Right?
know,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
and so I just love that this wasn't just like, let's take a class and learn the
Hmm.
theory. It was like, okay, we're learning the theory as we do the project. Let's do this together.
Right.
And the other piece of it was she offered group coaching and helped with mindset work.
Oh, yes.
And it really was, and like that was one of the things I expressed to her was like, I just feel like I've already tried this changing careers and it didn't work the last time. And I feel like a failure.
Mm.
And she's like, no, and she had to help me like see that it's not a failure. What did you learn from doing that the first
Right.
time?
Right.
How are we going to do it different this time? And she's like, you're already doing it different. Like, you've got me and you've got this program, and you've got the support of all these people. Whereas before I'd done it by myself.
Yeah.
And so her coaching was really like, and I hear that from other members of the group that I was in. I built really great relationships with many people from taking that course. And every time I talk to someone, they're always like, yeah, I learned the skill, but it was the mindset coaching piece that was the like pivotal piece um, of her service, that
Hmm.
she provided. And so it's just, and so anyway, that's what I'm doing right now, like that's what I want to give back to people now with my career coaching services. It's like, okay, yeah, we can work on like resume and like networking, la la la, but let's talk about like you and what you want and like where you're getting stuck and how we can like shift our perspective here and start having the confidence that yes, I can do anything that I put my mind
Yeah.
to. Look how far I've come up to this point. I'm gonna do it. I trust myself enough
Mm.
to. make it happen for me, you know?
So good. I love that you said about trusting yourself enough to letting it happen because you can have the best resume, you can have the best credentials, you can have the best portfolio, but if you don't trust yourself and don't have the confidence to back it, it doesn't matter because you're going to go in and self-sabotage yourself. And I'm not saying you're going to go in and flub the interview. You're going to find some way to shut yourself down without even realizing that you're doing it because something somewhere is telling you that it's not safe for you to go out there and put yourself out there and get what you're after.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it makes me think of a client I'm working with right now. She has said that something similar to me, right? Like, oh, well, I hadn't thought of it that way, or like, yeah, you're right. I guess I don't really want that job. I want this job instead, like there's something that is always like because our brains want to keep us safe and like comfortable because this is
Yeah.
the known, right? There's always something that's going to come up and it's not going to be blatantly obvious all the time, right?
Right.
Like you said, you're not going to go in and just like flub the interview, whatever, on purpose because,
Right.
it's going to be the subconscious like thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so having somebody there, an outsider to kind of help like bring your eyes back to the to the ball, like, nope,
Yeah.
we're looking here. No, you don't want that job.
Right.
Like that job is actually a safety net for you. You're like, no, we're focusing on this one over here because this is what we've been talking about this whole time. And guess what? You can do it. Like,
Mm,
even if you're struggling to see it right
mm.
now.
You said so much good stuff in there. Yeah. And I love, um, I've learned this in being in the community that we play in, is having someone else who can see you and hear you because you can't read your label from inside the bottle, right? You can't read your own label. And just letting someone else really listen to what you're saying, It's like, I
Yeah.
know the words that you're saying, but what you're actually saying is, and it's usually something like, I don't trust myself. I don't believe enough in this. I don't think I'm capable. I don't think I'm worthy. Oh my gosh, there's so many pieces, right? And I like to think about what a mediocre white man would do. Like, you know what I mean? They would show up with their like crappy GPA and their like degree that they barely finished and their like 5 years of random experience. And they'd show up at this UX job if that's what they wanted and be like, here's how I'm qualified, right? Here we are,
Yeah.
women back here with like all of this amazing, not only like the actual skills that we bring, but just what we bring as women and our
Mm.
empathy and our ability to relate to other people and connect. And oh, so much. There's so much to it. But then we're back here like rejecting ourselves before we allow anyone else the chance to reject us. Like, no, that's not your job.
Yeah.
That's not your job to reject yourself. So
Yeah.
I love what you're doing. I think it's so important. If you'd have like one or two little mindset shifts or little hacks that maybe our listeners could try to implement today or, in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we've talked a little bit about one, like just start noticing things, right?
Hmm.
And take a moment every day to write it down, whether it's, oh, I
Hmm.
notice it right now, or as you're getting in bed, just pull out a journal and write down, it doesn't have to be much, just a
Yeah.
sentence, So start just noticing like, what do I enjoy? What lights me up? What's fun? What do I hate? Like you can even go
Yeah.
start with that because that's
Yeah.
often easier.
Yeah.
What do I really dislike? What did I notice today that is like, ooh, if I could like have that, that would like totally improve my life. Or maybe you see an example of somebody in your day to day. So yeah, being observant, noticing things about yourself, and then taking the moments. And then I think networking and building a community is just like so key. And I know the word networking is scary for some
Hmm.
people. It was for me early on.
Hmm.
Um, but think of it as just like making a new friend, like
Hmm.
talk to people in your circle that can connect you with somebody that might be doing something you're interested in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just learn more about that from them and create that connection, because you never know where it's going to lead, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so networking doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to even be cold networking per se.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
But I think really as well, it's really great to get into a community. I ended up in Kathy Heller's community through doing her courses, and they changed my life absolutely. But like the
yeah,
connections I've made from there have been
yeah,
incredible. And all you have to do is put it out there like, hey, I'm looking, and I
yeah,
think it's maybe this, and expanding outside of your little circle, in your little
yeah,
close bubble, can provide a lot of opportunities as well. So, and don't be afraid to tell people what you're up to, right? I
yeah,
think sometimes there's a shame piece of like, I have that.
yes,
And I was thinking too, as you were talking about, like when you're in education, there's the CEUs, and you have to keep track of how many credits you've accrued so that you can up level to your next level of licensure, which is then your next level of pay. And then you're keeping track of all of your, if you've done anything over the summer, and are you going to conferences, and then all these other things that you have to do. Oh, and then you should be having so many credits towards a master's degree by a certain point to continue. Like there is so much tied up in education. It requires so much of your time, your energy inside and outside of the classroom, that it is very, very hard to
yeah,
kind of disconnect from that being your identity, because in some ways it kind of ends up whether you want it to be or not, right? I mean, I felt like
yeah,
I was always doing something. Like if I wasn't teaching or at a conference, I was hosting a club after school, and then I like coached one year, and that was a huge mistake. And and then I was doing my CEU credits online over the summer, and then I was doing this, and then I was in my classroom, and then it's like you don't have a lot of extra energy to expend outside of that, which is another beautiful reason to leave, because you get to be a whole other human again. Right?
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
So just give yourself a lot of permission, give yourself a lot of grace in exploring what else is possible. It doesn't have to be the be all end all. And I know people are kind of jumping ship here in the States, and I don't blame them. Every time I hear someone has left, I'm like, good for you. Good for you. It is
yes.
not on your shoulders if the educational system crashes. It is not on you. It is not on the individual teachers. There are much larger systems at play here that
Yeah.
are, you know, doing the things. But
Yes,
I will get
absolutely.
off my teacher soapbox. We are all so worthy of doing work that lights us up. And it doesn't mean
Yes.
you won't have an amazing day in your new role, but I promise you overall it will probably be better than no, it will be better. I promise you it will be better overall than what you're
Yeah.
experiencing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'll say in my current role, it's been an adjustment because I was always going, going, going as a
Yes.
teacher.
Yeah.
And it's way more like chill. Like,
Yeah.
especially in the beginning, I would ask my manager every time we met, I was like, so am I doing enough? Like,
Yeah.
am I doing is there anything more I should be doing? He's like, are you doing this? Yeah. You're doing this? Yeah. Okay, you're fine.
I
I'm
know.
just
It
like,
is wild. I know.
you know,
Yeah.
and you just have no idea, like you're saying, like as a teacher, you're doing this and that and outside and this and like getting this certification, blah blah blah. Like it's not like that in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you will just be like beside yourself if you are a teacher and you leave. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's not perfect, but it's just like this weight has been
Mm.
lifted, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you
Mm-hmm.
can you can relax and you can enjoy it. And one of the things you were saying, like life's allowed to be fun and to be an experiment. Like we don't need to take everything so seriously all the time. Like, oh my gosh, I'm a teacher and I have to because the kids and the salary and the bed. Like, can we just like breathe a little bit and just like, okay, what
Yeah.
sounds fun to me? You know,
Yeah.
like let's just start exploring and let's just start looking at life more of like, let's just try it. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It's not life or death.
Yeah.
So,
And as we know, this is a mom podcast. So we're talking to mothers here. And I think especially like when you add kids into the mix, like your kids deserve you being happy and fulfilled. Like that's how you're going to be their best
yes.
mother, is being happy and fulfilled and not depleted. And I don't know how any women, I know they do it. I know so many teachers are moms, but I'm like, I left before I had children and I looked at my
Mm,
colleagues like, how? How are
yeah,
you caring for tiny humans and then going home and caring for more tiny humans? I don't understand. I don't
I
understand.
know. And yeah, and that's the other thing too. Maternity leave, don't even get me started with school maternity leave.
Mm-mm,
Like,
mm-mm. Rude.
I learned something. I'm not a mom, but I've learned some things in recent years, and I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. Just the things that the education system gets away with because it's not okay.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Especially when it's a very female heavy profession. And here we are like dogging the females in the profession.
I know.
Oh,
I
it's
know. It boggles my
laughable
mind.
now, right? It's infuriating when you're in it, but now you
Yeah.
look back, you're like, huh, wow,
Yeah.
it's so funny that we're putting up with that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Which, oh, I don't know. It just makes me, you're on a soapbox. That makes me want to get on a soapbox. But I'm just like, it's almost like the education system knows that like women are very like, oh, whatever you want. Like, I can't speak up. I can't like, whatever. And they take
Mm-hmm.
advantage and it's not okay. So
100%. 100%. And that's what you see. And you're like, okay, that's just what we do here, right? And
yeah.
mm, look, she did it
Yeah.
and she got teacher of the year and now she gets to choose her parking spot. What?
Yes,
You
I know.
know?
And all those things. Yeah. It's just like a totally different world when you leave education and you're just like, wait, what did I put up with? Like,
Yeah, I had one year where
what?
again, I didn't have duty free lunch or recess, and I didn't have any specials one day of the week. So that meant I had kids showing up in my classroom at 7:40 until the end of bus duty at 3:30. Unless I had somebody cover my class, I did not have a bathroom break. Like, this is how insane this is. And of course, I could be like, hey, can you please just stand here and stare at my kids for a second? Or I know you have planning. Can I just run to the bathroom real quick? Like, you work it out,
Yes.
but it's like when you realize you can go to the bathroom whenever you want.
Yes.
You can take a phone call if you need to. That's, I mean, like personal most of the time, not a problem. Um,
Yeah.
you don't have to scarf down your lunch at like record speed. You can have a
Yeah.
leisurely lunch, right? And the piece where you're like, I'm not nearly as busy. Is someone going to notice and am I going to get in trouble? Like, will this be
Yeah.
on my evaluation? Like, what?
Exactly. Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, you would have someone come in to observe your lessons
Mm,
twice a year or anytime somebody else was in my room, I felt guilty for sitting down.
yeah.
I'm just like, what?
Seriously. I know. I don't know what that is. I've been in my daughter's classroom. She just finished first grade a couple times, and I've seen she's had a teacher this year who I think this was her second or third year. And then last year she had a teacher who had been in it like 14 or 15 years. And both times I saw these teachers sitting and I was like, thank God, like we've killed that idea. My mentor teacher, who I loved, I learned so much from her, but that was one of her things was you don't sit, you walk. She had her tennis shoes on every single day and she must
Yeah.
have gotten like 16 miles in because she was like, you move, you don't sit down unless you're working one-on-one or in a very small group, you're on your feet. And I
Yes.
don't know what that is. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
insane though that we have, I promise you, you're effective if you're sitting on your butt. Like it's fine. It's fine.
Ah, you've mentioned shoes a couple of times, which makes me think of a story. Um, so early on in my career, well, okay, at school, they were like, you have to dress so professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like bought a whole new wardrobe. I was like, what would a teacher wear? Like, I want to look so cute. And I like refused to wear not cute shoes, right?
That was me for a long time. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And then so I remember so I had a friend years later that was like, so are you still fighting back on the, no like they have to be cute shoes? I was like, "Oh no. I've given up on that a long time ago."
I know.
I was like,
Yeah.
I wear tennis shoes with anything now.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
I
I
don't
know.
even care how I look anymore.
I know. I know. I think Gen Z has like done us a favor because now it's like trending toward, I'm like,
Oh,
please don't
true.
ever let this die, please. Comfort for all, right? We don't need messed up feet on top of everything else.
Yeah,
Oh my
right.
gosh. Oh, and you had a post, was it last week, maybe the week before, about sub plans?
Oh yeah.
Y'all, you can take PTO and just be like, hi, I'm not here these days. Put up an out of office email and you just leave. There's no sub plans.
I know. It's craziness. Like I see my family now more often than I did when I was a teacher, like because I have to travel to see them.
Yeah.
And it's because I'm like, I have to work around holidays. I
Right.
can't take extra days off around holidays
Nope.
because there's like limitation. Like
Mhm.
you have to put into the lottery to see if you can get a day right before or right after the
Ooh.
actual break. And I'm like, you
Oh,
gotta be shitting me. Like
right. For real.
nobody's doing that.
Right.
And it's just like random things like that. I'm like, well, I can't leave because then I have to make lesson plans and then blah blah blah. And that's just so much work. And I'd rather come in sick. Like
Right. Oh my gosh.
it's ridiculous.
Totally. The number of times where I just dragged myself in. I remember one morning I threw up, just like had a dizzy spell out of nowhere. I was getting ready to leave, threw up, and texted the secretary who I love. She's an amazing woman. God bless her. I was like, hey, I vomited. I'm still gonna try to make it though. And she's like, okay, let me know if you decide to stay home. And sure enough, I just like cleaned myself up and like hopped in my car and made the 40-minute drive to school and went about my day because I knew it was gonna be worse if I had to
Yeah.
pull together my sub plans. Of course, there's the emergency sub plans, but like,
Those aren't real. Yeah.
That's what's amazing though about like these other jobs. Like I would say 90% of your job does not need to be covered in your absence. 90% of it is
Yes.
like, oh, she's gone for the week. Okay, I'll follow up next week or she'll get back to me. And maybe there's a couple of things, but then someone else steps in and you cover for each other. And it's not that deep. It's not that serious.
Yeah.
There's so much freedom on the other
There really
side.
is. Yeah. And I mean, I would say like my whole career teaching, I had the Sunday scaries. Like
Yes.
every
Yes.
morning, I was just like dreading getting out of bed and feeling so anxious about the day. And then like worrying about being late because I'm not always on time. And worrying about my kid. Like you have 30 kids that you
Yeah.
like have to be there for.
Yeah.
And that alone, like getting rid of that alone is like 50% of
Oh
it.
my
Like
gosh. It's a
it just
lot.
it's just such a relief, to look forward to going to work on a
Yeah.
Monday and
Right.
to not worry like, oh, I don't have to like get up and like race to school because I'm running late. No, okay, I'm running late. I'll just, let
Oh my
someone know
gosh.
and
Right. It's like
night
not
and
that
day.
serious. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know.
It's not that
It is night and
serious.
day. They treat you like a human, which is what we all deserve.
Yeah.
We all deserve it. It's crazy. So, yes, please free yourselves. And if you need some help, maybe you should check out Brittany. So, please tell us,
Yes.
about your offerings and where everybody can find you. And of course, about your podcast as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram at career.shift.brit with one T. And I offer one-on-one coaching for women, specifically teachers, but it can be any woman who is in a career, you've been in it for a while, and you're ready for more, and you're just feeling a little bit stuck. You need some help figuring out what's next and then taking those action steps towards making that a reality. So I offer that service and you can DM me on Instagram. I also have a website, brittanycates.com/home. And you can find all the information there. And then I have a podcast. It's called Shift Your Day Job. And it's about women who have made career shifts and the success that they've had doing it and the mindset work that they, went through in order to make it a reality. And it's just meant to show people that you can do it too. Like you
Yes.
don't have to be stuck. You don't have to be
Yeah.
miserable. Because your career takes up a lot of your life. And I know from experience, like how hard that can be to to feel that every day, this like weight on your shoulders of just not enjoying life. you know,
Right.
and like we said, you deserve better. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to help you see that and believe that and start making it a reality.
Oh, I love it so much. I love all of it. All of that will be in the show notes. Make sure you check out her stuff, check her out on Instagram. You're like the real queen. You are doing so many reels. There's so much content over there. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Of
Thank you.
course. And like she said with the podcast, like just hearing that other people are doing it, you start to go, oh, wait, if they can do it, maybe I can do it too. Right?
Yeah.
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 So good.
And yeah, it just makes me think how Kathy says, like when you see one woman doing it, it gives other women permission.
Mm-hmm.
So you have
Mm-hmm.
permission.
Oh, so good. Thank you so much for your time, Brittany. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Having a Mom Moment podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and for sharing this space with us today. Before you go, don't forget to check out the show notes for any links or resources mentioned in today's episode. And hey, while you're at it, why not give me a follow on Instagram and Facebook at Having a Mom Moment? You can also visit havingamaMoment.com for even more mom-inspired resources. If you've enjoyed today's conversation as much as I have, please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future episodes. And it would mean so much if you leave us a glowing 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, remember to embrace those mom moments, find alignment in your journey, and always honor the incredible woman you are. Take care, friends, and we'll see you on the next episode.